The lanterns glow. Listen, have you ever been to a place where the air itself reeks of fear? Like it's not just a spot on the map, but an old wound staring you down, and you're foolish enough to walk right into its lap. That was Black Hollow, Maine, back in October of 1887. 1. A tiny town, barely 600 souls, squeezed between a forest so thick it swallowed the sunlight, and an ocean that gnawed the cliffs to dust. Main Street had Sally's Diner, where the coffee tasted bitter and the gossip was worse, the Rusty Anchor Bar, where fishermen drowned their lost days, and a library run by Clara Henshaw, who held every town's secret behind sealed lips. Out on the edge, where the wind howled like a woman who'd lost everything, stood the Black Hollow Lighthouse, shut since 1947, when its keeper, Amos Creed, vanished in a storm that ripped half the coast apart. Folks said his lantern still burned on some nights, a green glow, sickly and wrong, that brought bad luck to anyone who saw it. I'm telling you this because what happened that fall wasn't just a ghost story. It was worse. It's the tale of kids, maybe like you or your friends, who thought they could outrun their sins. A tale of a light that didn't just show you your guilt, but devoured it. Devoured you until you became what it wanted. Come, let me take you to that night when 4 teenagers stepped into that lighthouse and woke something older than the stones it stood on.
Part 1. The Dare Imagine This. October 17th, 1987. A night so cold your breath turned to clouds, so dark the stars looked like stitches in a shroud. Danny Wheeler pedaled his bike down a dirt road, his knuckles locked on the handlebars. 17 years old, all elbows and shadows in his eyes, carrying a weight he couldn't shake. His little brother Timmy drowned 2 summers ago, and Danny was sure it was his fault. He hadn't watched close enough, hadn't grabbed Timmy's hand when the creek dragged him under. Now he dodged his dad Ray, who drank enough to forget Timmy's name, but not enough to stop hitting Danny. Danny wasn't alone. Sarah Copeland, 16, rode beside him, her dark hair whipping in the wind. She carried a sketchbook full of ghosts, drawings of her mother, Ellen, wasting away from cancer in a hospital bed that smelled of bleach. Sarah was the kind who asked questions no one wanted answered, like why the lighthouse glowed when it had been dead for 40 years. Then there was Mike Parents, 18, broad and mean, pedaling like he was out to crush someone. Mike's dad Ed taught lessons with his fists, and Mike passed them on to anyone smaller. Last was Jenny Platt, 15, Mike's cousin, small as a shadow, chewing her nails to bits. She was there because she had nowhere else, because her parents looked right through her like she was glass.
They were headed to the lighthouse because Sarah had a wild idea. She'd heard the stories. Amos Creed, a drunk and broken man, vanishing in the storm, his lantern cursed to burn forever. At Sally's Diner, she said, "We'll go in, look around, and laugh it off." Her eyes sparkled, like she was daring the world to strike first. Danny joined because Sarah's smile made him feel worth something. Mike came to prove he wasn't scared. Jenny just tagged along, hoping someone would notice her. The lighthouse loomed on the cliffs, like a giant ready to topple. Its paint had peeled to gray, its windows cracked and blind. The iron gate was rusted, but the chain was broken. Odd, since it had been there last week. Danny's stomach twisted, but Sarah pushed forward, her flashlight slicing the fog. Inside, it was colder than cold. It was wrong. The air was thick, like breathing sorrow, and it smelled of salt and something sour, like tears gone bad. Graffiti scarred the walls. Amos is watching. Run. The spiral staircase creaked, daring them to climb. They did, because kids are fools like that. At the top, in the lantern room, there it was. The lantern, big as a barrel, its glass cracked but glowing, green, pulsing like a living heart. They stared, and it stared back. Danny saw Timmy's face in the light, blue lips, wet hair, whispering, "You let me die." Sarah saw her mother, skin like paper, murmuring, "You wished I'd go." Mike saw his dad's fist. Jenny saw herself, fading into nothing. Then the whispers began, not from the lantern, but from them, their own voices, spilling secrets. "I failed him. I hate her. I'm nothing." Jenny screamed, stumbled, and her hand grazed the lantern's edge. Blood dripped, black in the green light, and the glass drank it. The glow flared, bright enough to burn, and they ran down the stairs, out the gate, into the fog. Their bikes wobbled as they fled, hearts pounding, none speaking of what they'd seen. But you know how it is with things like that. You don't just leave them behind. Part 2. The Shadow's morning came, and Black Hollow was the same but not. The diner still served burnt toast. The bar opened too early, but there was a weight in the air, like the town knew something had stirred. Jenny showed it first. At school, she was pale, her eyes glassy, her cut hand wrapped in a bandage already gray. She barely spoke, just stared toward the cliffs when she thought no one was looking. Danny caught her scratching her arm, leaving red spirals that looked like eyes. "You okay?" he asked. She smiled, too wide, and said, "It wants me back." Danny wasn't sleeping either. He dreamed of the creek, of Timmy pulling him under, but now the water was green, and shapes looked below. Hands, faces, all reaching. He woke with mud on his boots, seaweed in his hair, though he hadn't been near the creek in months. Sarah was buried in the library, dodging Clara Henshaw's sharp gaze as she sifted through old files. Clara, 60-some, with piercing eyes and tight lips, knew where the bodies were buried. Sarah found fragments. So, a 1910 lighthouse diary mentioning the light that sees your shame. A 1872 newspaper clipping about a keeper's wife who carved her regrets into her arms before walking into the sea. A faded photo of Amos Creed, half his face shadowed, holding that damned lantern. Clara snatched the photo away, saying, "Don't wake what's settled, girl." But Sarah wasn't one to back down. Mike was the loudest, bragging at school that the lighthouse was no big deal. But his hands trembled when he lit a cigarette. He drank more, stealing bottles from Ray Wheeler's stash. Ray, Danny's dad, 40 and falling apart, worked construction when sober, which wasn't often. He had Timmy's smile but none of his light, and he saw Timmy everywhere, in the yard, in the mirror, at the bottom of a glass. He yelled at Danny, "You should have saved him," and Danny took it, believing it true. Then the town began to crack. Tom Bellows, a fisherman who'd seen the glow a week ago, wrecked his boat and lost 3 fingers. At the rusty anchor, he muttered, "It knew me," before going silent. Mrs. Lyle, the history teacher, broke down in class, sobbing about a 20-year-old affair she couldn't hold in. Fights erupted at the bar. Screams leaked from homes. It was like Black Hollow's secrets were boiling over, and no one knew why. Sarah told Danny what she'd found. The lighthouse wasn't just a beacon. Long before the town existed, natives used that cliff for rituals, drowning people to feed the sea. Every keeper since had tales of bad dreams, lost ships, missing men. Amos Creed was the last, a drunk who let his light fail, blamed for a wreck that killed 12. He didn't drown in the storm, Sarah thought. He walked into something worse. Danny was skeptical, saying, "It's just a light." But then he saw Jenny at the school fence, whispering to no one. Her bandage was gone. Her hand wasn't bleeding. It was moving, veins crawling like worms. Mike snapped next. His dreams of his dad's voice calling him weak, saying he'd never be enough, pushed him over. He fought Danny outside Sally's, slamming him against a wall, splitting his lip. Sarah yelled at him to stop, but he shoved Jenny when she grabbed his arm. She hit the ground, and for a moment, her eyes glowed green, like the lantern. Mike fled, his face white as death. That night, he drove to the lighthouse, bottle in hand, thinking he'd burn it down, end it. No one saw him again. By dawn, Danny and Sarah found his truck by the cliffs, engine running, door open. Inside the White House, they saw his jacket, shredded, stuck in a pool of black tar that reeked of rot. The walls bore scratches, deep, claw-like, spelling mine. Part 3. The hunger now. You'd think they'd run, right? Tell someone, leave town, anything but go back. But guilt's a strange thing. It sticks like tar, pulls you where you don't want to go. Danny thought of Timmy, how he froze when the creek took him. Sarah thought of her mom, how she sometimes wished Ellen would die to end the pain. And Jenny, poor Jenny, was barely Jenny anymore. Her skin was gray, her fingers too long, like they reached for something she couldn't name. She was at Sarah's house, curled on the couch, whispering, "It'll fix me if I let it." Ellen, Sarah's mom, heard from her bed, frail as a bird, and gripped Sarah's hand. "Don't let it win," she said. "Guilt lies." Sarah returned to the library, avoiding Clara's glares, and found an 1839 letter tucked in a Bible. A keeper named Jonah Black wrote of the light that drinks sorrow. He burned his hand to stop it calling him, but it didn't work. He vanished too. Sarah showed Danny, saying, "It's not Amos, it's older. It uses our pain as bait." Danny was scared, but nodded. He was tired of running from Timmy's ghost. They decided to destroy the lantern, end it for good. Clara caught them outside, finally spilling her truth. She was Amos's niece, a child when he disappeared. He wasn't just a drunk, he was broken, carrying the weight of his wife's death in childbirth. The town shunned him, and Clara thought he gave himself to the light to escape. She handed them a sketch, ancient, of the lantern with symbols. "Wards," she said, "to keep sea things out. It'll fight you," she warned. "It knows what you love." Jenny's parents thought she had the flu, so Danny and Sarah sneaked her out at night. She was heavy, her breath rattling like stones. They gathered gear from Harper's Hardware: crowbars, a sledgehammer, kerosene, a flare gun Danny's boss kept under the counter. A storm was brewing. October 31st, waves crashing the cliffs like they were furious. The lighthouse waited, its glow brighter, like it was laughing. Inside, it was a nightmare. The doors slammed shut, locks gone. The air burned, tasting of copper. The stairs twisted under their feet, stretching longer than they should. Jenny was worse, her spine arched, her mouth split wide, her nails black as oil. She growled, "You can't take it," in Mike's voice, then Timmy's, then 100 others. Sarah's flashlight died. The walls oozed seawater, cold and alive. They reached the lantern room, and it was like stepping into a fever. The light blinded, green fire that didn't warm. The entity revealed itself. Not a man, not Amos, but something. Light and shadow twisted together, faces swimming in it. Timmy, Ellen, Mike, people long dead. It spoke, their voices. "You failed. You're nothing. Stay." Danny saw Timmy drowning, felt water in his lungs. Sarah saw her mom, rotting, saying, "You wanted this." Jenny lunged, her claws raking Sarah's cheek. Part 4. The breaking. This is where it gets real, where you fight or fall. Danny froze, Timmy's voice in his head, but he saw Sarah, bleeding, still swinging that crowbar, and something clicked. The thing was a liar, feeding on their shame. He grabbed Jenny, shouted, "You're not nothing, you're enough." Jenny blinked, her eyes human for a moment, and sobbed, "Forgive me." Sarah fought her ghost, yelling, "I loved you, Mom." She smashed the lantern, glass exploding like a gunshot. The room erupted, green flames, screams, the floor buckling. Jenny's body twisted, her arms snapping like branches, but she grabbed the sledgehammer and struck. Shattering the lantern's base. Black tar poured out, burning her skin. She collapsed, turning to ash, whispering, "Free." Danny fired the flare gun into the tar, and it screamed, not human, not animal, but wrong. The lighthouse shook, walls cracking, stones falling. Danny dragged Sarah out, her arm limp, her face bloodied. They reached the cliffs as the lighthouse crumbled, swallowed by the sea. The storm quieted, like it was satisfied. The glow was gone, but the waves churned, hiding something deep. Epilogue. The echo. November came, and Black Hollow softened, like a bruise starting to heal. Sarah's mom passed a week later, peaceful, holding her hand. Sarah cried but drew again. Trees, not ghosts. Danny quit Harper's, saving for a bus ticket out. He visited Timmy's grave, left the glove, saying, "I'm trying." Ray was sober, barely, and mumbled, "I messed up, kid." Danny didn't forgive, not yet, but didn't hit back either. Clara retired, burned the last lighthouse papers, saying she was done with secrets. Danny and Sarah met at Sally's sometimes, didn't talk about it, but understood. They walked the cliffs one night, the ocean calm. Far below, a green spark danced in the water, just for a second. They didn't see it. Maybe that was for the best. But the sea is patient, you know, it waits.